for the reading of the word. Our reading comes from Daniel chapter 6, verses 15 through 23. Then the men went as a group to King Darius and said to him, "Remember, your majesty, that according to the law of the Medes and Persians, no decree or edict that the king issued can be changed." So the king gave the order, and they brought Daniel and threw him into the lion's den. The king said to Daniel, "May your God, whom you serve continually, rescue you." A stone was brought and placed over the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet ring and with the rings of his nobles, so that Daniel's situation might not be changed. Then the king returned to his palace and spent the night without eating and without any entertainment being brought to him, and he could not sleep. At the first light of dawn, the king got up and hurried to the lion's den. When he came near the den, he called to Daniel in an anguished voice, "Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to rescue you from the lion?" Daniel answered, "May the king live forever. My God sent his angel, and he shut the mouths of the lions. They have not hurt me, because I was found innocent in his sight. Nor have I ever done any wrong before you, your majesty." The king was overjoyed and gave orders to lift Daniel out of the den. And when Daniel was lifted from the den, no wound was found on him, because he had trusted in his God. This is the word of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
You may be seated.
How well can you hear me right now? Can you hear me okay? All right. We're just gonna do that this morning, all right? So the bottom line this morning is honor God by giving him credit. Nicole, if at any point you can't hear me, would you please raise your hand? Awesome. Because I have a mic down here I can grab. All right. So honor God by giving him credit. Now, over this month, we have talked about honor. It has been our main theme. And the first Sunday, we talked a little bit about David and Goliath and honoring others by giving them a chance. And we talked about David and Jonathan and how honoring others, we can honor others by putting them first. Then last week, I talked about David and Mephibosheth. And we talked about how honor others by keeping your promises. And then today, we're going to learn about Daniel and how we can honor God by giving him credit. So, I don't know if you've ever heard of this particular movie or if you've seen it, okay? But it's called Coach Carter. And it's about a basketball coach, right? And they made a movie about his life because he had done something that people felt was extraordinary, okay? He put his players' education above playing basketball, all right? So he came into a program that was clearly losing, had a horrible season the year before, had not played well as a team. It was all about the individual. And he brings them together and he makes them into a team. Okay? And they start winning. But then he realizes that their academics are in the tank. So he actually locks the doors of the gym. And during practice, they all get tutored to bring their grades up. Okay, so that's the premise of this movie. This is why it's based on this particular gentleman. And you would think, as parents, we want our kids to excel academically, right? But the parents actually wanted him fired. But, school board stood behind him, kind of, sort of, and he helps his students. He lifts them up, and he forms a team. And then they start winning, and they're undefeated. But they get to that point that we often do as humans, when things all start going right, and things start falling into place, we forget how we got there. And the cool thing we're going to hear about Daniel is that he never forgets how he gets to where he is. And so in this movie, there's a point where they're beating another team. But they can't just be winning. They have to be trash talking and they're being disrespectful, and they've clearly forgotten that the season before they were like 4-22, right? But now they're undefeated, so they're awesome, and that sets them up here and it allows them to do one of these. Well, the very next practice, coach comes in and he tells them to run a play. It's called playing. It is called playing basketball. Is it called a play?
Yeah.
Okay. I like football. In football, it's called a play. So he tells them to run a play. Okay. And one of the players gets around and shoots and he scores. Right. And so the coach is like, "Yeah, whoo, that's me. I did that. See, whoo, I'm the one who put that play together. I'm the one who put you all together. That is on me. I'm awesome." So all the players stop and clearly think that the coach has lost his mind, right? So he's like, "Run it again." So they run it again, same thing happens. And he's like, "Whoo, look at me. I make those plays. I'm awesome. Look at me." And so now they're all stopped. They're all clearly looking at him because they think that he's nuts. And one of the players says, "Coach, your shoe's untied." And he goes, "Yes, it is." So he bends down and he ties his shoe. And he stands back up and he looks down and he goes, "Look at that bow. Look at the bow that I just tied on that shoe. Whew, I am awesome. Look at the bows I can tie." Right? Because he's trying to make a point, right? That it's not about you as an individual, it's about the team. I can tell you, if you haven't watched the movie, that after that scene, all the players have to do 500 push-ups. So it's a good movie. The point is that often when things are going so right, we forget to give credit to where credit is due. Now, Daniel's life, his whole life, is based upon giving God the credit. Now, there's a whole lifetime before Daniel gets to the lion's den. By the time Daniel gets to the lion's den, he's nearly 80 years old. So we need to backtrack just a little bit. to kind of learn how Daniel got where he is. So, Nebuchadnezzar, he was a Babylon king, and he comes to Jerusalem, right? And he just kills the royal family, most of them, and takes over. But what he wants is he wants a group of Israelites from there. And he wants to take them back with him. And he wants to basically turn them into Babylonians, right? So he tells his men, find me people from the royal family. Find me men from the royal family. But he has kind of, ideas of what he's looking for. So he's looking for young men who are strong, who are handsome, and who are smart. Aren't we all ladies? Right? Young, handsome, smart. Somebody who's strong, who can fight for him, but is also smart and can be taught their ways. And so they get a group and they do round some people up, and Daniel is part of this. He's part of this. One of the first things that they do when they get them is they change their names, because they should have Babylonian names versus Jewish names. So Daniel's name gets changed to Belteshazzar. And then his 3 companions get changed to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Now these 4 weren't the only ones that were moved, but these are the 4 that kind of make up the story of the book of Daniel. So one of the first things is they got their name changed, so now they want to change how they live, how they eat, all of the rules that they followed being Jewish. They want to change all of that. Part of it was what they ate. So the guard who's put in charge of feeding them becomes nervous because he's realizing that these particular 4 are not eating all of this food that he's bringing, and they're not drinking the wine, okay? And we've heard stories of kings from this day. Nebuchadnezzar was no different, right? He was like most of the kings of the time, where if you were in his presence for 30 seconds and you twitched wrong, you were likely to be killed. So, the guard, he doesn't want to go back to the king and say, I can't get these guys to eat. Right? So he goes to Daniel and he's like, I can't tell the king that you're not eating. So Daniel comes up with this plan. And he said, feed us vegetables and water for 10 days. If we don't look healthier than the others, then we'll talk. Well, the guard would rather feed them vegetables and water than go tell the king that they're not eating. So he does it. And he finds out that in 10 days, they do look far healthier, far stronger than the rest of the group. So he continues to feed them in this way. So it allows Daniel and them to continue to follow the laws that they grew up on. They're now in a land who doesn't believe in their God. They're surrounded by people who only wants to change them into being something that they're not. But these 4, they're going to hold on to their relationship with God. They're going to remain in the faith and lean into God. God promises to be with his people at times of trial and temptation. His active intervention often comes just when we take a stand for him. Stand for God and trust him to protect you in ways you may not be able to see. So Daniel, moving forward in all things, kept God as his focal point, right? Everything he did was for God, and every triumph he made, he praised God, he thanked God, he gave God the credit. And in doing so, God continued to show favor to Daniel. Well, you know what happens when you get favor and others don't. And that eventually happens to Daniel as well. But Nebuchadnezzar, though he praised Daniel's God, he still didn't believe in him completely. He didn't submit to Daniel's God. Many people attend church. They use spiritual language, but they really don't honor God with their lives. Profession doesn't always mean possession. How well does your obedience match up with your beliefs? So we know the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Eventually, they anger Nebuchadnezzar, in which then he tells the guards to stoke the furnace. Not only to stoke it, but to stoke it 7 times hotter than they would normally do. And then he wants these 3 thrown into the furnace. The furnace gets so hot that when the guards go to put them in the furnace, the guards burn up. But these 3 who believe and trust with all their heart, with all their mind, with all their soul, that God will protect them, go into the furnace and come out of the furnace the same way that they went in, unscathed, because of their faith in God. Nebuchadnezzar ends up having a pilgrimage with God. He still never submits. He watches all of these things. He knows these 3 went into the furnace believing in Daniel's God. That's how he refers to him, as Daniel's God. And never leans in and never submits. Because he's a king. Kings don't submit to God. Eventually, Nebuchadnezzar God puts him aside, and another person steps in. And Daniel does the same thing. And then another person comes in. And then eventually we get to a king called King Belshazzar. And he was the king for a few, his reign was short, let's just say, okay? But he's having this banquet. He's having this great banquet, and he's sitting with his buddies, and they're drinking, and they're praising to the gods of gold, and they're praising the God of silver, and they're doing all of these things that clearly God doesn't want them to do. And this thing happens. A hand appears and writes on the wall. The king's terrified, and he's not sure what it means. And he says, "Whoever reads this writing and tells me what it means will be clothed in purple, have a gold chain placed around his neck, and he will be the third highest ruler in the kingdom." Well, people, astrologers, magicians, those type of people, they all come. Nobody can tell what this means or what it says. So the wife of someone, because it's not really clear on exactly who she was, just says the wife, comes forward. Always takes a woman to point to a man who really needs to come in. Sorry. So she comes in and she says, Daniel is in the kingdom. So she explains who Daniel is. The king calls for Daniel. Daniel comes in. The king tells Daniel, whoever reads this writing and tells me, I will clothe in a purple robe, I will put a gold chain around his neck, and he will be the third highest in the kingdom. And this is Daniel's response. Daniel's reply is this: you may keep your gifts for yourself and give your rewards to someone else. Nevertheless, I will read the writing for the king and tell him what it means. Because Daniel doesn't need things, because he has the most important thing already. He has a relationship with God. And so this is what he then translates or tells to the king. He says, God has numbered the days of your reign and brought it to an end. You've been weighed on the scales and found wanting. Your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. So even though it wasn't a favorable, clearly, for the king, he stood by what he had promised. Daniel was robed in a purple robe. He was given the gold chain, and he was made the third highest ruler in the kingdom. And later that evening, the king was killed, and his reign came to an end. Darius the Mede takes over the kingdom. So now you got to think, Daniel at this point is nearly 80. He's lived the majority of his life going through all of these kings, trying to constantly be turned into or away from, more to the point, away from his God. But he has held strong. He has held on to his faith. So at this time, he is now one of Darius's top 3 administrators. And Daniel was working with those who did not believe in his God. But he worked more efficiently and capably than all the rest. He attracted the attention of the king and earned a place of respect. One of the best ways to influence non-Christian employers is to work diligently and responsibly. And then when I ask you why you're so great and awesome, you can say, because I have faith in my God, and I believe in him, and I give him honor. And when I do, good things happen. But of course, when you're the employer or employee, when you're the employee who's doing everything right at half of the pace that everybody else is doing, people start to not like you a little bit, right? Daniel made enemies at work by doing a good job. Perhaps you've had a similar experience. When you begin to excel, you'll find that coworkers may look for ways to hold you back and tear you down. Conduct your whole life above reproach. Then you will have nothing to hide, and your enemies will have a difficult time finding legitimate charges against you. Of course, this will not always save you from attacks. Like Daniel, you will have to rely on God for protection. They couldn't figure out how to get rid of Daniel. They were irritated by him. He was always doing everything right. He had the king's ear. He was well loved by the king. And so how he wasn't a bad guy. So they knew the only way to get to him was through his faith. So they were trying to come up with a way to get rid of Daniel. Well, King Darius, he was a proud man. And like most of us, if you get a group of people came up to me after service, feel free to do this. If a group of people came up to me after service and said, "You are awesome. You are great. That sermon knocked it out of the park," right? My head gets a little bit big. I'm like, yeah, right? So that's how Darius was. But they knew that's how he was. So they go in and they tell him how great he is. And then they tell him that he needs to write and sign into law a decree that for the next 30 days, no one is allowed to pray to any god, any person other than King Darius. Right? But here's the thing. In Babylon, the king's word was law. In the Medes-Persian Empire, when a law was made, even the king couldn't change it. So once he signed that paper, once he signed that into law, for the next 30 days, that was the law. That was it. And they got him through his pride, and he signed the law. And then all they had to do was wait and watch Daniel. Because they knew Daniel well enough to know that Daniel prays 3 times a day to his God. So they just had to wait and watch. And as soon as they caught him praying, they went back to the king. Here's the really cool part. Daniel knew that. He knew what they were up to the second he heard what the decree was. He could have tried to hide praying. He could have done it in a closet. He could have simply waited 30 days. I'm sure there are some people in here who've gone 30 days without saying a prayer. Right? Yeah. I'm not going to call you out. Right? 30 days. It's only 30 days. Daniel made no attempt to hide his prayer routine from his enemies. Even though he knew he would be disobeying the new law, hiding his daily prayers would have been futile because surely the conspirators would have caught him at something else during the month. Also, hiding would have demonstrated that he was afraid of the other officials. Daniel continued to pray because he could not look to the king for guidance and strength. The only person that he could look to for guidance and strength was God. How does this apply to us? If we've learned nothing this month, we've heard about Saul, and the minute Saul started putting Saul above God, another king was anointed. David continually put God in the forefront. Daniel lived a life of giving God the credit. The person who trusts in God and obeys his will is untouchable until God takes him or her home. To trust God is to have immeasurable peace. God who delivered Daniel will deliver you. Do you trust him with your life? Bottom line, honor God by giving him credit continuously